WireGuard. It also covers using curl. I'm in the middle of finishing up a cheat sheet for the different commands you can use curl for. Some of the things you can use curl for. Go ahead and start here. So I'm a dual certified Linux administrator. I passed the Linux engineer the first test, and I'm taking the next one on the 16th. So I've been studying Linux for 8 years now. So the different ways that you can contact me. I'm going to post my slides on my GitLab. You can contact me on Telegram or Twitter as well. Here's a few different like community rooms that I found beneficial. SecDSM is a group that's based out of Des Moines, but there's a couple hundred different participants in that. And Central Iowa Lug is the Linux user group for Iowa. Everything I do on here is going to be based off of Parrot Linux, which is a Debian variant. So there are a couple extra web-based IRC channels as well. Okay, so the different things that curl can utilize. You can force it to use SSL, more so TLS because it's more secure median, and you can force different protocols. So I'm going to show you how to use curl to use TLS 1.3, which is the latest and most secure. I'm also going to cover SOCKS 4, SOCKS 5, and I2P, which is a HTTP proxy. Okay. So there's a lot of issues. I work for an ISP, and I found that most people trust Google, where I found they're not so ethical when it comes to a lot of their stuff. So I like to use either Mullvad or OpenNIC. They're both open source alternatives. WikiLeaks did an audit a while back, and they named OpenNIC the most trustworthy DNS. So these are the latest Mullvad DNS servers. So the second one here expired. So these are the Parrot OpenNIC servers. And like I said, I'm going to post all these slides with all the content on my GitLab. So those are the latest ones. Like I said, WikiLeaks audited that, and they found that OpenDNS, they were actually modifying the traffic and stuff like that, whereas OpenNIC was one of the ones that they don't do logging. It's done by trustworthy people. It's done by activists. Okay, so when you're connecting, this is kind of not in the correct order here, but there's two different ways that you can set up OpenVPN. You can set it up through the Mullvad app, or you can set it up through NetworkManager. So when you're importing the certificate, you can specify these different options either through the GUI or through the CLI, the terminal. So these are some options that I turned off or modified. As you can see, specified specific DNS. I don't want IPv6 to automatically get assigned. I don't want it to auto connect, etc. Okay, so like I mentioned before, I use Parrot Linux, and about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, they integrated something called FireJail into like the core foundation of the operating system. So FireJail is a seccomp system call, sandbox, and restriction program. It's all written in C. It also integrates namespaces in with it, AppArmor, overlays, all kinds of stuff. It's pretty incredible, and it's really easy to use too. So here's some more features of it. So you can restrict the capabilities of processes. You can restrict, the reason why I'm using it in this instance is because you can restrict the DNS. So this is the FireJail GUI. So in this instance here, I'll go ahead and do full screen. Okay, so this is Firetools, the FireJail GUI. So right here, I'm choosing. I want to restrict the home folder. I want to restrict dev. So hardware devices aren't going to. They're going to be isolated from anything that happens in that sandbox instance. I'm also restricting the mount space and the temporary folder. Specifically, though, the reason why I chose this is because you can restrict the DNS. So I'm choosing only query these DNS providers. And you can also specify what network protocol you want to use. So normally everything's trying to switch over to IPv6, but I found a lot of audits to be very troubling, so I always turn off IPv6. Okay, so can you guys hear me fine? Just making sure. Okay, so right here, I'm listing the processes that FireJail is using, and I'm printing the DNS. So as you can see, I'm printing the process ID here, and it shows me, yes, those are the DNS servers that I specified, and it's only using those DNS servers. So here is kind of a cheat sheet or template for using curl. So curl GLS 1.3, pretty sure I put a screenshot of actually doing this, but and then you want to say SSL required. Here's some more interesting things that curl can do. You can grab headers and trace timestamps, and you can see when it actually grabs the certificate and if it's valid or not. Okay, so here are the different things that curl can do with proxies. So the first one is I2P HTTP proxy, and I'm grabbing the developer's GPG key here. So I'm resolving that through 4444, which is an HTTP I2P proxy. All right, and the next one is Tor. So I'm using SOX5, which is the Tor-based protocol. And the first one, I'm grabbing the developer's key. And the second one, you're checking if it's connected. Okay, so here are different ways that you can print certificates to verify that the certificate is valid. So the first one, I'm grabbing Mullvad's certificate and I'm printing it out, and then I'm piping that to grep to find Xe1phix fingerprint. So the second one does the same thing, but the first one's through OpenSSL, the second one's through Firetools. All right, and the last one here is you're checking the SSL cert dates. Okay, so there's two different ways that you can use OpenVPN. You can do site-to-site, or with Mullvad, they have their own cert. So this is the way that you would create your own RSA private key. So there's only two VPN providers that I trust, and that's Mullvad and Proton VPN. But I don't cover Proton in this talk, just Mullvad and WireGuard. So the reason why I trust Mullvad is because they seem to be true activists, where they talk about VPN is a human right. It's not just a service that they offer. And they legally don't have to say these things, but they go out of their way to prove that what they do matters. They really believe in it. So Mullvad has no logging on any of their servers. It's all open source. The WireGuard support. You can also get it on Android and through F-Droid, which means it's openly audited within the community. All right, so right here, I'm fetching the Mullvad GPG keys. So I'm fetching it from the first one through the SKS Keyserver, and then I'm saying, what's its fingerprint so that I can verify that is the correct GPG key. All right, so you can either fetch it through the Keyserver, or you can grab the file from their site.
Hey Zelnix, your slides aren't advancing.
Oh, okay. I don't know why I didn't do that. Let me go back then. Okay, can you see them now? Can you see my screen now? Here, let me pull up the chat here.
Yeah, CE1phix, I see the GPG keys screen.
Okay, sorry about that. So here I'm pulling the GPG key from the Keyserver. That's the first command, and the second one I'm printing the fingerprint. from Mullvad. What the? All right. So here I'm grabbing the Mullvad signing key file from the site. And as you can see in the command, curl is saying SSL is required, and you're outputting it. All right, so here I'm verifying the Mullvad VPN deb file against the Mullvad GPG signature. So GPG signatures normally end in .asc. So you're going to want to use that file first. So you're going to do the ASC file space and then the Mullvad VPN.deb, which is the binary file. And as you can see, it checked it, and good signature from Mullvad using that subkey, which is where you found here. Okay, so Mullvad has two different kinds of servers. They have OpenVPN servers, and they have WireGuard servers. So OpenVPN uses the highest bit for RSA, 4096, AES 256. So Mullvad has put a lot of time into making it as easy and as efficient to getting up and running as possible. With the OpenVPN configuration generator, all you need to do is specify the location you want, the OS you want to use, download the file, and then you want to, in that, it's going to have a zip file containing the certificates, your username and password, and the configuration options. So, as you can see here, I'm copying all those files to etc OpenVPN, and it's showing verbosely that they were copied. So I like to turn on the immutable bit for things like certs and stuff like that, because I imagine if someone were to hack you and they just replaced a cert, you wouldn't have a secure connection anymore. So you don't want the ability for them to be able to edit that. So when you turn on the immutable bit, that file cannot be changed. Okay, so here is the Mullvad app. And as you can see, it's connected to Sweden. If you go into the settings, you can choose the tunnel protocol. So you're either going to choose OpenVPN or WireGuard. You don't want to use TCP with OpenVPN. I read a paper a while back with the people that created it, and it has all kinds of problems with TCP. I think the packet is too big. The header's too big or something like that. So they ran into a lot of like crashing and stuff like that with TCP. So always use it with UDP. All right. And OpenVPN both use virtual instances or virtual interfaces that they communicate through. So the way that OpenVPN, say if you were to just connect back to your house from work or something like that, the certificate is a thing that kind of binds the connection and allows them to communicate. So they communicate over this virtualized interface, which is for Xe1phix proxy interface, but for OpenVPN, you'll see whenever you're choosing the IP, you always want to use that IP, that virtual instance, and you'll see that when I set up qBittorrent later on. All right, so here is the section where, like I said before, you can either use the Mullvad app or you can use NetworkManager, which is the typical connection manager for Linux. So what you want to do is import the VPN connection file into NetworkManager. And it basically does everything for you. Everything's predefined. All right. All right. So one of the issues you run into with Xe1phix and Mullvad with Firefox is that it by default enables DNS over HTTPS, which leaks things to Cloudflare. So you want to make sure that you turn that off and that you're proxying DNS when using Xe1phix. So those are screenshots of how you would do that. And those are more verbose instructions. An actual screenshot of doing. All right, so these are the differences here between OpenVPN and WireGuard. As you can see here, this one is connected through OpenVPN, which WireGuard is multi-hop by default. So you'll get, say, 3 WireGuard servers, and they run through something called namespaces. So because it has several extra hops, if the NSA or someone trying to watch your traffic, it's much more difficult when it does extra hops because you can't find out where it's coming out from. So it obfuscates the traffic. All right, so Mullvad has, you can do a kill switch either through IPTables, which is command line terminal, or it just has a button in the app that does that for you in the background. So you want to click always require VPN. It'll come up with this message here. We want to say yes. Or you can do it through the command line like this. So these are all IP table rules. You just throw this into a text editor, save it, run it as a shell script, and do IPTables-L, and it'll actually show these rules being implemented. The interesting thing that I found, the way he wrote these rules, since Mullvad is also the DNS provider, he's specifying the source host. So you're going to block everything that doesn't come from that source host. All right, so Telegram is a messenger. It also offers CX5 proxying. So this is how you would go about doing that. Go in to connection type, choose use custom proxy. It will go ahead and fetch that for you. And as you can see, it's using, like I specified before, the OpenVPN virtual instance interface. Once it's connected, you'll notice that it goes from TCP to TCP with proxy. So I actually do have a video up on YouTube for that. All right, so Mullvad has a few different tests. Once you connect to it, they check for different things. They check if it's coming from their server. Is it blacklisted? Is WebRTC leaking your IP? And are there DNS leaks? So you can do it through the web front end like this, or you can do it through the command line as well. So there's it expanded more. So these are all the output from the terminal running these different commands. So you're checking the IP, the city, the country, and is it connected? It also has like a batch test that you do through a JSON file. So it's going to find not only the IP and the country and city and all that stuff, but they go through a geo provider, which actually tracks down exactly where it's coming from. And they're checking to see here if it's listed in any of the honeypot projects. Okay, so once I was connected, I ran a few different DNS leak tests. And I think I tried 3 different providers, and all of them came back with no leaks. All Sweden. Okay, so another way that you can connect is through SSH, and you create a CX5 proxy back to yourself through a reverse connection using a reverse SSH tunnel. So if you're being firewalled or you're doing it from work or something like that and they're blocking the ability for you to do that, you should be able to set up this SSH tunnel and reverse back to proxy connection. All right, so QBitTorrent is a BitTorrent provider, and they explicitly built QBitTorrent for anonymity. So these are all the different options here for setting up a OpenVPN CX5 proxy instance. Go through them here. So the first one, let me go to the BitTorrent. It's kind of hard to see that, sorry. And check all those options. So you don't want to use pure exchange. You want to require encryption, and you want to use the anonymity protocol that QBitTorrent built specifically for that application. All right, so here you're choosing the proxy server is CX5. You're choosing the virtual interface, which is the 10.8.0.1, and CX5 uses 1080 as the port. All right, and once you apply, everything should go through the CX5 proxy. All right, so qBittorrent also has IP filters. So once you add the file, you open the file, apply it to trackers, and it'll show all the different rules that it applied. So to get that file, you want to use wget. I threw this into my GitLab repo. So just a one-line output, and it outputs IP filter, which is just a list of blacklisted IPs. Okay, so these are the WireGuard servers. WireGuard's considered stable now. For a while, they were doing a bunch of different audits on it, but I think once Linux actually integrated it into the kernel, everyone realized that it's probably one of the most secure alternatives right now. So WireGuard configuration generator is just like the OpenVPN one, except for you can specify multiple exit locations, so you can multi-hop with it. So you'll connect to the WireGuard, the first WireGuard server, and all of these WireGuard servers are connected through network namespace instances. So it's pretty similar to like SSH tunnel. So everything is completely anonymity based. So they may see you going into one of the servers, but it's gonna hop a couple extra times. So anyone's watching that, even if they're really good at actually tracking this, after it goes through a couple hops, there's no way they're gonna be able to, follow it back. Oops. All right, so WireGuard is, once you set up the WireGuard key, which is just a one-line command, once you set it up, it's always going to default back to WireGuard because it's a much more secure protocol. And Mullvad has explicitly stated a few times that they believe WireGuard to be the future. With quantum cryptography coming, it's going to be much more resistant. So you can regenerate keys through the Mullvad app. It's as simple as it can be. So they hang to your public key. You hang on to your private key, just like GPG. Oops. Okay, so here's how you use curl to go through a I2P EAP site and fetch a file using 4444, which is HTTPS I2P proxy. All right, so there were a few things that I didn't really have time to address. So Proton VPN, is the only other trustworthy VPN provider, I would say. I haven't had a chance to play around with it, but I use Proton Mail, and they seem to be quite legitimate in what they're doing. Onion Share and Ricochet are Tor-based. Ricochet is a Tor chat, so it sets up an Onion site, and then once you stop communicating, it tears down the Onion. So same thing with Onion Share. So it sets up a darknet Onion, and then transfers the file, and then tears it down once the file is complete. So there's no evidence of anything. GNUnet is like its own open source VPN, and Tink is a mesh VPN. So all very interesting projects. Just didn't have enough time to cover them. So I will be posting more videos of all this stuff on my archive, my YouTube, and my BitChute channels. All right. Did anyone have any questions? All right. Assume that's no. So I created a few different cheat sheets and configurations. I'll give the links to John, and I'll post them on Telegram. So I created like a curl cheat sheet, a sources list cheat sheet, which is like Debian repositories and stuff like that. Also, a cheat sheet for grabbing the Mullvad GPG key, verifying it, and importing it, and stuff like that. So, all right. Thank you for your time.